Hello and welcome to the Tomcast. I'm Tom, president and dictator for life of 515comics.com. With me today, I have a fabulous guest, Ashley Stoner.
What's up?
So Ashley is the writer and artist of a webcomic called Legend of Zelda Staff of Power, which at the time this airs will have just come to an end, and all of its pages will be online. And that's insane, because it's not often that webcomics end.
I've been told.
Yeah, so it's kind of an exciting, momentous occasion, and it's also something that I'm, acutely interested in just because I have a webcomic that someday I would like to end, so I just wanted to talk to you and figure out, how you're feeling about stuff, and just sort of pick apart your journey. This webcomic journey.
I am at your disposal, sir.
Well, fantastic. How many pages total is your webcomic?
Oh my gosh. It's like 400 and I can't even remember for sure now. It's under 500, but I'm pretty sure it's over 450.
Okay.
So somewhere, it's like 480 something, I think.
Okay, alright. Yeah, that's a sizable chunk of pages.
It's up there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
count after a while.
And how long ago did you start it?
Well, now that's kind of a complicated question. The story's gone through two different, iterations,
Sure.
if you will. The original one started in 2007, I think. And then there was a several-year gap in between when that one ended, and I decided to scrap it and redo the idea from scratch and start up again. So I'm pretty sure the newest version kind of got the wheels rolling in around 2011 and then ended 2017.
Okay, awesome. So, math tells me that would be about 6 years, right?
Yeah, no, don't ask me to math, man. I don't math well.
But, so like you said, it actually had another start that you just didn't like and decided to restart.
I didn't. Eventually, it just got to a point where I'm like, where am I even going with this? I don't even know. I've got other options that I suppose I could do, and there was just a point where I just didn't have any drive to continue going where I was with the old version.
Had you written it all out, or were you kind of writing it as you went?
Well, I mean, I had kind of, but not really. There was a base story to it, but it wasn't good. I was young. I was inexperienced. You know how it goes.
I totally do.
You get to the point where you think, I can do better than this. But I need that time to scrap the idea and completely rebuild it from scratch and then start building up.
Yeah, I think that's something that happens I see that happen a lot with webcomics. Certainly as creators, I think we're more likely to look at earlier iterations of our comics and say, oh yeah, that one wasn't going to go anywhere.
Worst critics.
Yeah. It's hard to argue that you don't end up with a better story because of that, a better comic, but I also sort of have this, walk this line where it's like, sometimes it's important to start over if you really think you can do a better job, but also you can't keep doing that.
Oh yeah, even now I think, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. No, if I keep doing that, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Right.
It's going back and back and back, and I'm going to get stuck.
Yeah, otherwise you'd never reach today where your comic is done.
Oh yes.
It's so weird. Can you describe some of the feelings that you have of being done with it?
There's been several. At first, it was kind of this, oh my gosh, it's actually coming. It's actually happening. It's been since 2007. What am I even doing right now? And then it kind of got to the point where, oh my gosh, am I done yet? Am I done? Can I just be done? My brain wants to be done. And then to the point of, oh my gosh, okay, it actually did happen. I am done. Well, now what?
Right.
I just kind of sit there. I just kind of sat there. And I stared at my computer screen and I thought, oh, there it is. Now I'm done. Now what? It was kind of not really underwhelming, just very weird.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of time and energy and effort and creative like juice goes into making a comic, and you
It
do it all
does.
yourself, right? Like you do the writing, the
With
art,
the
like
exception of the pages that my friend has done, and there was a few back towards the beginning where I had a couple other friends get involved too. But for the vast majority, yeah, I did it all myself.
yeah. So to just kind of come to an end like that of like, oh, I guess this giant creative outlet is done.
It is. It's like all this effort just suddenly I got to cut it off, and what it's this voice in my head sitting here thinking, wait, why'd you do that? Well, I had to. The end came. What do you want me to do?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of your story. So we know when you started it, when you restarted it, but how long has the Staff of Power story like existed in some form in your mind?
Since about 2007.
Oh, okay. So you just had the idea
That,
and was like, I'm gonna make a comic.
well, it was. That was, I kind of got, I was a late technology bloomer in a lot of regards. We didn't have a great, computer when I was a kid living with my parents. I mean, we're about the age where that was kind of just cutting edge technology for a lot of us. And so I didn't really get exposed deeply to a lot of games and stuff until I got moved out on my own and I had a computer of my own and could branch out and play with a lot of different things on my own. And then I got introduced to Ocarina of Time, and then it was a lot of fun, and I spent a lot of hours on it, and then things just started happening in my brain, and I lost control of any hold of that, and then it just exploded into what it is now.
For people who have not read the comic, what's your pitch? Like, what's your description of the comic?
Staff of Power is loosely based in, I guess, what you would call the whatever timeline it was where Link succeeded and was sent back in time to grow up on his own. And then that was I think they call it the adult split timeline. And so this was kind of just even a branch off of that. Obviously, it's not canon. It can't ever be canon because
Right.
that would be silly.
Right.
So it was just kind of a thing that was just an idea in my head, and it just kept growing.
The story centers. I mean, Link is a main character, but it centers around the character Serenity, which is a character of your own design.
Yes.
How did you come up with her? How long has she been around?
She's been around since the beginning, and she's gone through, oh boy, so many different changes as she kind of developed and her existence developed. And that really started to happen once this new iteration of the story was birthed, because that was one of the greatest gripes that I as myself had in the beginning was she was really boring. I'm going to be the first one to say that, and it could be better, and I could make it better, and so I scrapped it and decided to make it a little better.
So what's different? Like, what was so she was boring in the original iteration of the comic? Like, what all did you change? Like, what about her was boring?
I changed basically everything except for her name. Eventually, I just decided to go with the point where there's a lot of things that get delved into in the Zelda universe, but one of them that kind of gets glossed over every time is fairies. And I decided that I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to see what I could do to make fairies kind of fun and interesting.
Yeah, they are just kind of there, aren't they?
They are, exactly. And it feels like that there could be so much more, especially in older games, like Link to the Past especially. That was my first dipping my toe into the world of the Zelda games, was Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo back when I was a kid. And just spending so many hours in that game, not knowing what the heck I was doing or where I was going, but I knew that it was fun. So then, I mean, all the fairies in that game were just super cute, and they actually were kind of important. And even further on in the Zelda games, the Great Fairies, like even the goddesses to a point, but it never really gets a background story.
Yeah, they're kind of a set piece, and it's
They
just
are.
accepted that they're there.
They're just there to be useful, but not important, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, they seem like they would be, but they're never expanded upon other than what they can do for power-ups.
Right.
That's boring.
Right. And so, yeah, that's the thing. So, like, from my limited, I'm not much of a gamer, so from my limited Zelda experience, like, I knew fairies as you go to the fairy fountains to, like, refill your hearts, sometimes maybe get a piece of heart. And then I know, like, in games like Wind Waker, they sometimes upgrade your weapons and stuff, right?
Yep, they would do that in Link to the Past, too, and in Ocarina of Time, they would give you, like, say that's where you got Din's Fire, or Nehru's Love, or Farore's Wisdom. You would get certain spells like that. You would get your magic meter from them, increased heart containers. That was where you got your spin sword spell thing.
So actually, yeah, pretty important to the progression of the game.
And they're just they're always hidden away, so you kind of have to either know where they are ahead of time or know what you're looking for in order to find them to begin with.
So that is a cool thing to try and expand on, because yeah, there's a lot in the Zelda universe. There's so many different unique races and characters and lots of cool places.
There's always that base kind of elemental aspect, and especially in Ocarina of Time, they go through that with the different medallions. You got the light, the forest, the shadow, the water, all that, the important stuff, and they never give much of a reason why. They're just kind of there, and they match with the sages, so I just kind of took that aspect and dove further into that as well, with the shrines and the aspects and the guardians and whatnot.
So when you came up with this idea and you decided that it was a story you wanted to tell, why did you decide to do webcomics? Why did you decide to make a comic and put it online?
That is an old story. And it started off, I mean, back after I had written the original idea just of the story as a random story in itself. I eventually got into kind of the different little Zelda communities that were around, and some people did commission work for art and stuff, and I thought that sounded pretty fun. So I came across this one girl named Michelle. She goes by Kikoli online, and I went to her and said, "Hey, I'd like to get a commission from you. You're super awesome." And she read through my story and comes back to me, and instead of a base idea, she says, "How about I do a comic?" And I think, say what now? And so, yeah, the original Staff of Power didn't start with me drawing it.
Oh, wow.
And I cannot stress that enough, because she was awesome. She basically started through the first part of the original version of the story, and then, I mean, we were both young, we were both in college, so eventually school kind of got to be overwhelming for her, and she had less and less time to do this, and that's when I kind of said, "Hey, I'll take over the reins." And so that's when I started my input on the original version, and then once I got so far into that, I thought, this needs to be redone and thought out better if I'm going to really do this.
So when you first reached out to her, you had like a script or a story written out? That's what she was drawing from initially?
She was just going from a rough, horribly written story, might I add. And she just made something pretty darn awesome out of it.
It wasn't even your choice to really do a webcomic.
It wasn't. It was kind of, it just came out of nowhere, and it was kind of the most awesome thing ever.
So you made...
I never expected something like that to happen.
You made a webcomic because someone else was like, "I'm going to make this into a webcomic," and then when they stopped, you were like, "Well, I guess it's already a webcomic, so I'll keep going."
I know, I'm like, whatever, I'm going to keep this train going as long as it's going to go.
That rules.
And here we are 10 years later, it's like, all right, I guess it finally reached its stop. Okay,
Yeah.
I guess that was the most dearly efficient train I've ever been on.
That's fantastic. Like, I haven't asked a lot of people, like, why did you decide to start making webcomics? But I can tell you, of the people I have asked, none of them have said, "Well, it wasn't even my idea, someone just did it." And then I decided to do it.
It just came on over, and I'm like, all right, let's just see how far this can go.
To the end, apparently.
I never expected that to happen, and yet here we are.
Yeah. In creating the pages, how long did you tend to spend on each page? I know that there's pages that probably took a lot longer than
Oh
others.
my gosh. There was, oh man.
You
There
got
was
some pretty
one.
effect-heavy pages.
No, there was the second one in the freaking epilogue. Just took so long. Oh my gosh. I've never had a page take longer than this one took. It seriously took me like a month to finish this stupid page. Because I just kept starting and stopping. And then when I was done, I just couldn't even touch the thing for just like a week.
Yeah.
I was just so done with
Sick
all
of looking at it.
details. But on average, before I changed file sizes, I could get a page done in probably like a day and a half. Yeah. Depending on how, like you said, effect intensive it was. But for the most part, a day and a half, I could get it done.
That's not bad. That's not too bad.
It's really not. When I changed file sizes, I had to get used to that. So it took me a little while to figure out my niche to do everything. But once I got the hang of it, it was probably a similar time frame, maybe a couple of days tops.
Where can people read the comic, and are you going to keep it available up online for people to read?
I am going to keep it up online, definitely for the time being, just especially until my next project kind of gets its feet under it. And I mean, Staff of Power is its own individual thing anyway, so I'll probably leave it up for as long as I can. But for people that are looking for it, for now, at least, it is on DeviantArt, it is on Facebook, it is on Smack Jeeves, and it is on Tapastic.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. And we'll have links wherever I post this. There will be links to all those different places that you can read it. Well, that's great. I'm glad that it will be accessible to people. I mean, now that it's done, it's like you gotta leave it up, like because people.
Exactly.
Now you can point people to it and be like, "Here's an entire comic."
Like I made free cards that I hand out, especially if I'm at cons and if I'm cosplaying Serenity, and people stop and ask me like, "Oh, where's that character from?" Like, here you go. You can find out.
It's from this comic that I drew.
Exactly.
You can read the whole dang thing for free online. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think to ask about that. But yeah, you have cosplayed as your character Serenity, as well as other Legend of Zelda characters, right?
Yep. Yes, I have. Princess Zelda twice. I've done the Ocarina of Time version and the Twilight Princess version.
Oh, wow.
Malon, Twilight Princess Link. I did a Midna a long time ago, but it was really, really bad, and I like to pretend it never existed, so there's that.
You heard it here. It never happened. That's excellent. So do you go to a lot of shows throughout the year and cosplay?
I wish I could get to more. I'm kind of excited that Anime Iowa is coming to Des Moines this year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
they're moving closer, so I'm kind of excited to go see what that's going to be all about in a bigger environment.
Indeed. That's a pretty cosplay heavy show, as I recall from the last time I went.
I've been, let's see, 3 or 4 times, I think, over the years, and it's always been a pretty cosplay heavy crowd.
Well, you just briefly dropped it, like I wouldn't even notice, that you are going to start a new project. So what's that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can try. There's some weird thoughts in my head that aren't entirely intact yet, but there is going to be an original project coming, and it is going to be fantasy based, and it's got some, I don't want to say ties to Staff of Power, but I'm definitely bringing some underlying aspects from it, like the original parts that I kind of touched on, but never really went further into detail than I did.
That sounds cool. That's exciting. So it's going to be another webcomic?
It is, and I'm going to try to do a printed version of it too as I go. Because so far, I think I've broken it up. It's probably going to be about maybe 3 to 4 different books.
Oh, wow.
Like I say, there's some basic ideas, but they're not all in line yet. It's just kind of a whole big mess in my head right now.
When are you thinking about starting this new comic project?
That I'm not sure. I'm still working on a lot of the backstory, so I don't want to start writing much of anything until I get all that flattened out first. Because frankly, I ran into that problem a lot when I was working on Staff of Power. I would write myself into a corner and think, how the heck am I going to get out of this? So then I have to go back and think, okay, what did I do beforehand? Was this a thing? Did I even touch on this? See, that's the worst part about working with a fan comic is you're working with a canon universe that's kind of already intact that you can't change, that already has such a screwy timeline to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
That you don't even know where to start with what's right. So you kind of have to shoehorn in this whole thought process of, okay, I can make this work, but does it work with this? Of which you have no control over.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that would be very difficult. That would be very difficult to...
It is. You wind up thinking so hard about some things that probably don't need to be thought about that hard to begin with. And then you run into the situation where you forget kind of important things like the fact that, you know, Princess Zelda's even a character. Because that happened. And that was pretty embarrassing when I got to that point. And I thought, how the heck did I even do that? So I had to go back and retcon in a stupid reason for why she never even appeared.
It's one thing when you've created a huge unwieldy universe, but when you're handling someone else's huge unwieldy universe, especially one that has so many devoted fans, because like you want to get it right, like you don't want to make simple mistakes that people are gonna.
And that's where you start thinking about things a little bit too hard, and then you get yourself into a corner that you're not sure how to get out of again.
Right. So that's the beauty of, like, speaking as someone who has made his own huge unwieldy universe, that is something that's nice, is that I do feel like it's a little bit harder to get stuck. I mean, you certainly still can, and I certainly still think it's a great idea to spend a lot of time coming up with your backstory and your setting and your universe before you start.
Yeah, I'm already running into all sorts of problems similar to that, so I'm actually kind of glad that I'm doing this.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, too, where you can just decide kind of on the fly how things are going to work. Like, so long as you're paying attention to, like, what you've already established in your story, you can just be like, oh, well, I guess I need it to work like this. I guess it works like that.
It can't established. Yep. You can't change it now.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, that's the trick, though, is you get to do that once, you know, and then that's how it works.
You do, and it's great, and it's super fun, actually.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, but it will. I imagine it will be somewhat a simpler task than trying to wrangle all of the Legend of Zelda lore.
Oh my gosh, yes. There's some parts that I thought, I just can't make this work. It just can't occur. And that's where the beautiful term alternate universe comes from.
That's true. Yeah, you do get to grant yourself a lot of freedom and flexibility with that, at least. Ashley, thank you very much for coming on the show and answering some of my questions and kind of let me pick your brain about what it's like to finish a comic.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
It was an honor. I'm flattered.
Well, no problem. Well, I think it's cool to. I really like meeting other people who make comics in Iowa, especially webcomics, because that's my bag, and so it's cool to.
There are literally dozens of us.
I know. Well,
dozens.
But I am surprised actually at how many people I found that are making comics in Iowa. I think that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. I dig.
Yeah, I would not have assumed that it would be a large number, and it's not probably, but it's bigger than I thought.
There's not much. Hey, there's not much else we can do in the wintertime.
That's fair. That's a fair point. So again, there's going to be links everywhere to the Legend of Zelda Staff of Power archives, where everybody can read the comic in its entirety. And you can probably watch those same places for news about the upcoming to-be-named comic.
Oh, there actually is a name.
Oh, snap! Oh, what's the name?
Through Hell or High Water.
I love it! Oh, that's very exciting.
Yeah, so I've got that far, which is nice.
That's awesome. Exclusive. Maybe not. Maybe
Exclusive.
you've posted
No
it somewhere
problem.
else. But
No, I haven't. I haven't. You're right.
Oh,
It is
snap.
actually kind of
We're breaking
exclusive.
it. We're breaking it here. Right?
Breaking news. Oh
That's
my god.
right. On the Tomcast. Ooh, yes. Come here for your Central Iowa webcomic news. Thank you again for being my fabulous guest. And
No problem whatsoever.
thanks to everybody for tuning in. And you guys keep your stick on the ice.